Right, let's start with what may be a setback for the Premier League champions Arsenal in their pursuit of Bruno GuimarAes. So, Mark, where are we with this one?
Like you said at the top of the show, a significant day because this feels like we've been talking about Bruno GuimarAes to Arsenal for a number of weeks and possibly even months now. But finally, there has been club-to-club talks over the last 24 hours and Arsenal's opening offer for the Brazilian midfielder has been rejected by Newcastle United. What we now know is that the two clubs are talking because up until this point, it had been through intermediaries and there'd been a lot of noise on social media, a lot of reporting, a lot of things being said, but actually nothing had really happened between Arsenal and Newcastle, and that's key in this situation. We know that Bruno GuimarAes is now with his Newcastle teammates in La Manga. In terms of his contract, he's got 2 years plus a further option for Newcastle, so essentially has a 3-year contract. So they really hold all the cards in this situation. In terms of what happens next, it's up to Arsenal to decide their next move.
But come on, Mark, this is going to happen, isn't it?
If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would say that Arsenal end up with Bruno GuimarAes at the end of the transfer window. Now, I know that's not something Newcastle United fans want to hear, but I think it's the direction of travel. You know, it's a big deal. He's 28 years old. He's going to be 29 in November. He's one of those players that's been up to Newcastle and had a fabulous period of time since his arrival. He's been the heartbeat of that team. He's been the heartbeat of the city. He's been a key player for obviously Eddie Howe until his departure. And he's probably the one player that totally gets it. Totally gets the city, the fan base, the culture, just everything about what that city represents. And he has been a fan on the pitch, living and breathing everything that those Geordies want to see. So this will really hurt them. And this will be a tough one to swallow. Anthony Gordon, fine. Barcelona, we've doubled our money. Sandro Tonali, fine. We've doubled our money. Yeah, we're not so happy about him going to Spurs, but we've got good money for a player that was brilliant for us, but not always brilliant. Bruno will hurt because he's the one that they have a connection with. You put me on the spot. I think this deal gets done. Mikel Arteta wants him. He wants Arsenal. And now it's just a case of finding that magic number to keep everyone happy.
Of course, I put you on the spot. Welcome to the transfer show, Mark. Get used to it.
I'll come for you, don't worry.
This is a nightmare for Newcastle, isn't it? I mean, Mark's just reeled off the players that have gone. Let's add Eddie Howe to that as well. This is just falling apart, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a nightmare 12 months. You go back to last summer and what happened with the Alexander Isak situation, which really affected Newcastle's pre-season. They didn't spend the money wisely as yet. Huge outgoings off the pitch. There's been poor performances on the pitch. They finished 12th last season. There's a real sense of instability now because you've got a very young squad, youngsters with no Premier League experience, a new head coach coming in with no Premier League experience, with half a pre-season as well. A very, very young squad. A lot of ambition this club had when the Public Investment Fund took over in 2021. It feels a long way away from those trips to Wembley, Champions League nights. It feels like we're a long way away from Newcastle getting back to that level, which is what Newcastle fans were promised and have consistently been promised. But Mark's right. I think the fans could stomach losing some of those key players over the course of the last few years. But Bruno GuimarAes really embodies what has been so brilliant over the course of this roller coaster journey over the last 5 years at Newcastle United. And for him to depart, I think Newcastle would feel, and the fans would feel, maybe it's the final straw almost. It's a case of, it was great the 5 years we had, but have we now given up on this dream and daring to be great again?
Well, on that, how have the richest club in the world got to be in this situation?
Well, a club the size of Newcastle, based on where they're at in recent years in the Premier League and in terms of their revenue, means they can't just spend their way out of trouble, which they did when the Public Investment Fund took over, when they signed the likes of Kieran Trippier and Chris Wood to get them out of trouble. And it propelled them from a relegation battle to qualifying for the Champions League and eventually winning a major trophy. But the financial rules make it very difficult for clubs that don't generate a huge amount of commercial income and matchday income, which is something that Newcastle are looking to work on now in terms of a bigger stadium. It makes it very difficult for those clubs to consistently compete with those at the very top of English football. That's why Aston Villa have struggled as well when it comes to these financial rules. It's worth bearing in mind the Public Investment Fund were aware of these rules at the time, but because they're not generating that income. Let's look at the season before last. Newcastle brought in £52 million in terms of match day income. Manchester United, that same season, £160 million. The financial rules means it's there in a way to preserve the status quo. Those who are always rich remain rich, and those that are trying to punch above their weight have to find different creative ways of doing so.
It's got to be wrong, hasn't it?
And it makes it very difficult for clubs like Newcastle, and it's why it is very frustrating, the fact they've not been able to maintain the high levels they've hit. Eddie Howe got them qualifying for Champions League football twice. They won a League Cup trophy. But now they're opting for a completely different transfer strategy where they're attracting young players between the age of 18 to 24, players with a high ceiling that they can sell for big money further down the line. You'd think this strategy is very, very different from what the Public Investment Fund had in mind when they took over the club. It's going to be fascinating to see how things play out, because are they going to remain patient with this strategy, which will take a long time for things to pay off? You'd think, unless they have a miraculous season this year, it looks unlikely they're going to qualify for Europe, and you wonder how long they'll remain committed to this project.
Yeah, Mark, I go on about them being the richest club in the world, but in reality then, are they?
No, they're not. Because the Premier League only allows you to spend, with new squad cost ratio rules, 85% of your turnover on footballing costs. James touched upon some of the figures there. So, for example, Newcastle United, in their last set of financial accounts to the end of June 2025, they had a turnover of 335 million. You compare that, and obviously you can spend 85% of that. You compare that to someone like Manchester City, 694 million, which was 20 million down on the season before because they didn't progress as far in the Champions League, or Arsenal at 691 million. So they have got less than half the money to spend. And if you take, say, 85% of 691 million, gives you a fairly chunky amount of money you can spend on footballing costs. So that's why a lot of people say, how can they not spend? Why can't they do it? The rules in place don't allow them to do it. Yes, PIF, as we know, access to billions and billions of pounds. They've invested in sport across the globe. They've withdrawn a lot of that recently with Live Golf, and we've seen what's happened in various other sports. But they simply cannot compete. And that's the problem they've had. And that's why now perhaps they've gone to a slightly different model where they've gone for younger players. Maybe they go, well, let's see if we can have a journey with a young group. Let's start with a young group and let's go on a journey with them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Because David Hopkinson, the chief exec, has been very bullish and said, I want Newcastle United to be competing for the Premier League around 2030. So 4 seasons' time. Maybe he's seeing this young group going, right, this is the group we are going to mould and develop and grow with and see if we can get them to where we want to get them. And the Newcastle fans are desperate, absolutely desperate to see more of the same type of success they've had under Eddie Howe. And it's just a shame that phase, that era has come to an end. Yeah. And this is the start of a new journey. And they'll be desperately hoping that these young players can maybe just punch above their weight, because there is a lot of pressure and expectation on this current Newcastle group.
Speaking of eras, Arsenal, they'll be hoping they've got an era which is beginning. Will that era include Vinicius Junior?
Well, one thing we know is he's returned for pre-season training with Real Madrid following Brazil's exit from the World Cup.
So does that mean no?
I think it's a deal which is going to be very complex and difficult for Arsenal to do. The one thing in Arsenal's favour is the fact that Vinicius Junior has 1 year left in his contract, and so Real Madrid are in a slightly tricky situation whereby they need to convince him to sign or more and commit to a long-term contract, or they need to stomach the idea of him being sold in this transfer window to avoid him leaving for free. Now, we know Real Madrid are experts at signing free agents. They don't want to be in a situation next summer where they see Vinicius Junior join Paris Saint-Germain, join Arsenal, join one of their top rivals for absolutely nothing. So they've got no intention of selling him in this transfer window. They're confident that he'll agree a new deal. And at the same time, Arsenal are monitoring this situation. He is their number one target on the left-hand side. There's a vacancy there for Vinicius Junior to enter and become a Premier League legend, you'd have to say. But it's very difficult for Arsenal to get this deal done, not least because of the finances which would be involved in Vinicius Junior's wages and, of course, a transfer fee they'd need to pay Real Madrid. But as the days tick down in this transfer window and there isn't a deal signed by Vinicius Junior, then there does remain a very strong possibility that he could leave. But again, the numbers here are going to be astronomical.
Isn't that the point, Mark? It's all very well Vinicius Junior maybe agitating for more money on his contract or saying he's going to go, but there's nowhere to go because no one can afford him, surely.
Outside of the Saudi Pro League, I don't think anyone really can get to where he's at financially. If you believe the reports, he's earning between £400,000 and £450,000 a week. Now, Arsenal's highest paid player, Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, all on around £300,000. So, as James touched upon there, they would have to absolutely smash their wage structure to bring in a player of his calibre. Now, Arsenal are the Premier League champions. You talk about the start of an era, or the era of success that they believe they can have. Now, let's be honest, Arsenal, if they are as effective as they were last season, should possibly go on and dominate English football for a number of years. Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, all with new coaches, new era. This is the most stable that Arsenal have been. They've had Mikel Arteta at the helm for a number of years. They've spent over £1 billion in the transfer window. They've assembled this really brilliant title-winning squad. They just need to top it up now.
Yeah.
Would a marquee signing like Vinicius Junior be the type of player that would take Arsenal again to that next level? Absolutely. But it does feel like financially this is going to completely transform the club. Historically, a club that's not really spent huge amounts of money on wages and players. They have over the last few years, but everyone remembers the Arsene Wenger era where they just didn't spend any money.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this. There's a part of me that thinks this is a cynical move by Vinicius Junior and his camp to engineer a new contract at Real Madrid. Look at me, the Premier League champions of Arsenal want me, so therefore I'm a man in demand. You should give me a new contract and I'm happy to stay. Jose Mourinho will play a big part in this as well because clearly this is a superstar player that can unlock things, and Real Madrid haven't won La Liga for the last couple of years. Yeah. They need to get back to where they want
anything for the last couple of years.
Exactly, they didn't win a single Spanish Cup. So he's going to want to have the best of the best of the best at that football club to ensure that he delivers silverware, because that's the expectation.
So whether or not, Mark, Arsenal get him, don't they have to concentrate, given on what's happened in defensively, don't they have to concentrate maybe on centre-backs and bring someone in?
This is definitely an area of concern, mostly because of the injuries that they've suffered. We know that they're interested in John Stones, but of course he's joined Inter Milan, signed a 2-year contract. He's not available now. We know that there is interest in Ezri Konsa, and the dialogue internally has been discussed. They've explored the parameters of a potential deal with regards to Aston Villa. However, they're not going to let a key defender go. There's going to be a valuation that Arsenal have and Aston Villa have, and we understand there's quite a significant gap between those two valuations at the moment. We know that Saliba is going to be out for some time. We know that Jurrien Timber is out at the moment, although he has teased the fact that he'll be back soon. How soon, we don't know. We know that Ben White has suffered with injuries as well. So a number of key players for Arsenal at the back, and big question marks over the ability to be involved, certainly for the start of the campaign. So, yeah, Arsenal centre-backs, definitely a position to keep an eye on with regards to the Gunners.
Absolutely. So much going on in this